It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
So welcome back to those of you on Facebook. This is actually going to be a pre-recorded show for the radio next Wednesday, but we're going to have it live right here on Facebook today. So we're going to keep rolling for the next hour, and we have my repeat guest, and always a lot of fun to have in the studio,
Yay.
Eric Miller from Talk About Martin.
Howdy
So,
do.
howdy do. I tell you, there's been so much happening. We really wanted to, we're going to do a few updates on the county, but one thing that we wanted to really focus on today is Indiantown, of course, but human trafficking in the area. It's really a lot more prevalent and a lot more serious than people realize, and unfortunately, particularly in Indiantown.
Yeah,
So
considerably.
it truly is. So we're going to go ahead and start the show with that. I want to thank my sponsors, Commercial Mortgage, which has been in the industry of small balance corporate finance since 2003. Their focus is on equity, new debt solutions, challenging corporate foreclosures, and debt restructures. Commercial Mortgage never charges a front fee or deposit, and consultations are always free. Areas of expertise include hotels, marinas, office buildings, restaurants, apartments, multifamily condos, golf courses, home builders, land development, including new and repurposed developments. Call Commercial Mortgage LLC at 561-310-5295 or visit them online at commercialmortgagellc.com. Also, the best kept secret in Martin County is the Fish House Art Center. It's down in the pocket in Port Salerno. You can look them up online before you head out to fishhouseartcenter.com or give them a call, 221-5482. But there's all kinds of fun things to do. They have local artists, an Airbnb, art gallery, boat charters, marina, craft and creamery, which has the craft beers, wine, and my favorite, 24 flavors of ice cream. And after you have your ice cream, you can rent, paddle boards and work some of those calories off. So a lot of fun out there at the Fish House Art Center. And then finally, folks, right around the corner is hurricane season. I cannot recommend enough to make sure you have a safe place to store your boat. Once a hurricane is named, I can pretty much guarantee you will not find a place. The safest place, in my opinion, here in the area is Indiantown Marina. It's located inland on the Okeechobee Waterway, and they are very well-protected hurricane hull. And also, it's a do-it-yourself or full-service boat yard. We all need service on the boats, regardless of how long you've had it. Those things always seem to need maintenance, so electrical, mechanical, bottom painting, whatever you need, you can have the good folks at Indiantown Marina help you out. 772-631-3272. A couple updates here. We talked a lot about the 2 pet stores that sold puppies that the county commission...
You mean the puppy mills?
That's what they call them, is puppy
right,
mills.
The puppy mills.
Supposedly, but they all they did was sell puppies, and they are selling puppies. There's been hundreds of people that have purchased new puppies and have happy homes. However, our county commission decided to, make them illegal as of June 30th of this year. Both pet stores, folks, taxpayers, here we go again. Get your wallets out, because for whatever reason, the county commission could not grandfather in just 2 stores. They did for strip clubs, right? And but that they can grandfather in, but puppy stores they did not. So these puppy stores have sued. So folks, we're going to be on the hook here for 2 lawsuits. I don't blame the puppy stores. I support them 100%. These are American businesses. Yep. Neither one had any complaints through animal control. It was basically rescue groups that decided that they did not want to have the competition of puppy stores.
Yeah, one rescue group in particular that's in a public-private partnership with our county and takes a great deal of our taxpayer money. See, our policies are now being set by people that we're paying out of our pockets. They're quote-unquote experts that know all this stuff, that are setting our local policies for us. They're basically making law without being elected.
They are. The commission actually went to what's called the ACCOB, Animal Care Control Oversight Board, and said, you guys decide, and basically we're going to vote however you decide. And this board was entirely made up of these rescue groups.
Yeah.
Entirely.
Yeah.
There was no equal seat or equal voice on this board for our small business owners who employ, by the way, this is the thing that gets me, they employ 16 people. They are bringing income and revenue into the county. They're bringing benefit by jobs. They're paying taxes, where these rescue groups are taking our taxes, or they're living on donations and don't have anybody hired, many of them. And if they're hired, they're based on the donations. So these two small store owners, they weren't even notified. Just to go back a little bit,
they weren't even included in the process. And that, again, Casey, we've talked about this on previous shows. If you go in and you take out dog stores or pet stores and just drop any generic, how about a eyeglass store?
Right.
But because the glass was coming from some, I don't know, impoverished nation that they had slaves in
We
place,
don't
so
like it.
we don't like it, we're going to ban eyeglass stores now. Who gave these people the power? What even makes them think that this is halfway constitutional, or what the voters want them to do? They've got runaway budgets. We've got bigger problems to solve, and they're spending all this time and money now on lawsuits with people that want to sell puppies because the public-private partnership they're involved in told them that they needed to do it. Well, thank you, folks. Welcome to the new communist America.
And our county commission partners with the BDB, the Business Development Board, and they said, welcome all new businesses, unless you sell puppies. Then we don't want you. If you bring jobs through selling puppies, we don't want you. And folks, there's something called ex post facto laws I wanted to point out, and that is you can't make somebody illegal that when you enact a law was already legal. So, for example, back in when I was younger, in the days I was 16, and drinking age at that time was 18. So at that time, they passed the laws to be 21 years of age. Well, everybody who was 18 could still buy alcohol. They were grandfathered in. It's ex post facto. You can't make them illegal. I was 16, so I was out of luck. I hadn't reached the age of 18 yet. But that's an ex post facto law. If you're already legal, you can't make them illegal. And our commission's done that. And I'm going to say one of the lawsuits, the county's ordinance is illegal in at least 7 ways. So we don't want to spend the whole hour on this.
Priority, though.
I just
Where
wanted
are
to
their
know.
priorities?
Where are the priorities?
Like I said, strip away pet stores from it. Say anything.
Who's the next
but look
small
at
business?
Look at the overreach, the overpower. There's more to this than meets the eye. There's something else going on here that would put them in the position that they have to be in. Like this.
I couldn't agree.
I don't understand it.
It's terrible.
It makes no sense.
Here's another thing: Sailfish Sands. It's a golf driving range, bay, and restaurant. And I actually just went to it for the first time over Mother's Day. I enjoyed myself. It was wonderfully ran. I know there was a lot of backstory to the county putting this in, but they had a private operator that was running the golf bays and the restaurant. Turns out it's costing them $56,000 a month lease. I can't imagine anybody could possibly make a profit when the county's charging that much. So what's the county doing? They're severing their ties with Sailfish Sands, and they're going to run it themselves. So here we go.
That's what the county, here we
Get
go.
your
How about
wallets out again.
Sailfish Splash Park, whatever you call this
Sailfish
thing?
Splash,
They tell a
yep.
developer that wants to bring in their own money to build a water park in Hobe Sound by I-95, not even in a congested area like Willoughby Avenue, and they use congestion and problems and build out and yada, yada, yada. They deny them, and then they turn around and put in Sailfish Park down here. Now they're going to be in the restaurant industry, and they're going to compete with other restaurants out there. So your tax dollars, folks, are going to pay for your Board of County Commissioners to oversee a staff to run a restaurant where you've got private enterprise out there running restaurants. They're funded with taxpayer dollars.
You know why? Because our county commission, they have OPM, other people's money.
You betcha.
It's so easy to do. If they lose money, they don't care. We're still paying for it. And you know what? They can try all these little ventures, and it's other people's money. There's no skin off their back. So, folks, we point this out because you've got to remember this when you vote. I mean, it's such a huge machine, the county commission. Eric, one pet peeve I have about it is it really is generally staff running the county commission. I've said this, I don't know how many times. Why do we even elect commissioners? Because they just do what staff says to do.
I'm so busy. There's so many things for me to do. I've got to listen to staff. Staff, the experts.
Staff
the
recommended
experts,
it.
The experts.
Staff recommended it.
Staff recommendation. Staff recommendation. Staff recommendation. Polly want a cracker?
It really is.
It really
that,
is.
folks.
I mean, you look at all of the agenda items up there. How many of those agenda items on any of the past 6 agendas that have come out have been initiated by any one of the commissioners?
Including this puppy ordinance, by the way, that came in through staff, and staff was the one that put together
staff
all
recommendations.
Of the,
Staff recommendations.
That's exactly right. I actually had one of the commissioners tell me after the meeting, well, we didn't have a choice other than to either this was when they were deciding whether or not to extend the ordinance 6 months or to shut them down on December 31st. And they said they had no other choice other than those 2 choices. And I'm like, you're the county commission. I elected you to represent us. If you go back and direct staff, no, there should be a third choice that we grandfather them in. But anyways, folks,
they're
that's
an excuse.
A little bit of a
Staff is an
soapbox.
excuse. Staff is an excuse too. They lean on them like
that
a
or
crush.
Our commissioners don't want to look
into issues. And I got to tell you, while we're on the topic of the commission right now, if we can, what about all of these dynasty? There's family dynasties within Martin County now. There's decade-long dynasties of rule on the county commission. I mean, between Doug Smith and Sarah Hurd, look, guys, you've served well. You've done great things. You can go to Tallahassee and you can get money. You can do great things. But it's time for fresh
new
face,
blood is fresh ideas.
Blood. There's too much power that accumulates over 2 decades.
You know what, Eric? There was actually a bill that went through Tallahassee this session that wanted to limit commissioners and school board terms to 8 years. Now, school boards was already limited to 12 years from last session, right? Well, you know what? And I saw the letters being sent to the county commission. You guys got to say something. You better oppose this bill. So guess what happens? The county commission portion of that bill was dropped. So now the school board members do have term limits for 8 years, but our county commission, through lobbying, and I'm not going to say just our county commission, but county commissioners in general across the state, managed a huge win there. They do not have term limits yet.
Well, that just means that the Republican Party agrees with them. What's this I hear? You changed parties. You win NPA.
NPA. You know what? You're absolutely right, Eric. I am so frustrated with both parties at this point. I don't feel like either one represent me 100%. So this way I can vote for who I want. And I've always said you need to vet the candidate that you feel represents you best. And really, I'm a conservative, so I always lean that way. I truly do. But if I disagree with something the Republican Party's doing, that was really my only way to say, I disagree with you. I'm removing my registration as a Republican voter. So that's what I did.
Good for you. Yeah. I've tried working from within with the party. I've tried educating people about the party. I've tried educating people within the party as to the direction that they're taking and remind them that they started from the Whig Party and they're going to end up bald in the end.
Right.
Okay. They really are. They're going to get scalped because, I guess then that would be fair to say that you won't be spending your $350 a ticket for the Lincoln Day dinner in Martin County to go see Matt Gaetz.
That's right.
Gates.
Yeah, I know. They have Matt Gaetz. Now, Tom Homan is amazing.
But what does the local Republican Party actually do other than one big event a year and rah, 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 go Republicans? We have a Republican-controlled House, Senate, and governor's
mansion. As a
Republican,
it was rampant this year. I thought, you've got to work with people too, and that just did not happen in session this year at all. It's a little surprising to me.
Yeah.
Even with Disney, it's like everybody's like, yay, but Eric, I'm this person. I don't want government interfering with business. I don't want government interfering even with my personal life. And I think that there's a line that is crossed. So.
Well, there's a progressive nature that's still entrenched, even in the Florida Republican Party at a state level, and it shows. When we bring up legislation that says, okay, you don't need a license anymore to carry a weapon, but you can't open carry it. You got to conceal the doggone thing.
Right.
What flavor of republicanism is that? What flavor? See, this is going to be a good analysis to go back and look at session. What went and what didn't go. And your conservative progressive meter is going to go like this from the outcome because our actions create these outcomes, and those outcomes reflect our character. So as a party having supermajority control, the reflection of the character of the Republican Party is really going to start to unfold and show. I got a lot of good things to say about what's going on up there too. It's better than having, Walken Lawton or Charlie Crist back in the seat.
Right,
okay,
right.
I'll give them that. And we are really in the best place that there is to be in the United States right now. And all of these discussions about growth bombs and everything happening down here. You know what, folks? We've seen this before. And the way that things are going economically, I wouldn't expect over the next few months to see much of anything exploding. We're in the best economy in the world, pretty much, right here in Florida.
We are. There's a
right
lot
now.
of people moving here. I mean, I actually think we're going to sustain a pullback better than most other areas because people want to be here. And I will say we do have a good environment for most businesses, unless you're a puppy store
or a restaurant that you got to compete with your local government,
right.
or maybe a golf course and maybe a water park. I don't know.
Right,
But, come to Mount China. Come to Martin County. You'll like us.
It's absolutely right. So there are some good things. I just think that you really need to be careful about how far you take your agenda, because there are people have different ideas. People are made up of different ideologies, and this really has been focused. It feels like to me, even as a former Republican, this is really focused on DeSantis wanting to run for president on a national agenda. So a lot of the things that were passed were to show his strength to conservatives.
I agree with you. There was a lot of politics, but at the same time, it's the nature of the beast.
It's the nature of the beast. That's exactly right. I want to talk a little bit more locally here too, Eric. This is such a important topic, and it's one that just tears at my heart and everybody's heart and your heart. And we're talking about human trafficking, sex trafficking, and truly murder. And it's very prevalent in Indiantown.
Yeah.
And you are very much involved with Indiantown politics and what happens out there. So I wanted to just...
backyard.
It is
Literally,
your backyard.
right
It truly is. You're right on the boundary. So I just want to talk with you. Tell us a little bit about what's happening out there.
Wow. Local government is finally starting to get its act together. You still have factions of people out there, given their liberal background, that are, petitioning government for their reparation and their right for this and their money. They want their money back to do all these wonderful things. The village, for all intent and purpose, is hamstrung at this point. The water facility that they have is under capacity. They are at a point that I'm beginning to get a feeling, and surmising just from listening to discussions and people talk in meetings, that I wouldn't want to bring a request for a new development forward in Indiantown right now, because there has to be capacity with the water system in order to generate a legal, PUD to go in, or a small community, whatever it is you're putting in.
Capacity is a big issue.
And capacity needs to be there. And if that plant's running at 80% capacity and it's projected at almost $60 million worth of build out, and 80% of your money comes from FPL every year, and FPL could be very well moving or downsizing, you're in a rock in a hard place, and everyone starts screaming for money for football pads, and they want all these leagues started through Parks and Recs for athletics, which are great. It's for the children. Yes, I love children. No, I'm not against children. I would love to be able to help. But I say to the kids and folks in Indiantown, look to your councilwoman, Angelina Jolie, I was going to say. Angelina. Her and her husband, they run one or two soccer leagues because they had two children that were in two different age brackets, so they had to go to two different leagues. So they actually ran teams within those. They took over the leagues. They travel the state. They do it on their own time and their own dime. And we're trying to get people to understand out there that, look, the government's responsibility in Indiantown, one, is limited because there are other fiscal imperatives that have to be met before your village actually collapses, okay, like your water,
right,
your infrastructure.
Right.
That's important, people. For a village, you have to have water, to be self-sufficient. So that's going to be on the horizon for them. There's a lot of people that are talking right now. One of the commissioners out there is talking about he did bring in a consultant consultant that was just a friend that wanted to talk about gated communities and the benefits to Indiantown as to how the gated communities could help everything out. So now there's a movement afoot and some excitement about doing that. And now there's people that want to change the LDRs all of a sudden. There's this lack of visionary focus on a plan. Everything is reactionary to whatever the environmental impact is that's hitting them at the point. They're responding, and it's rubber at this point. So Indiantown's in a bad spot.
So Robert Burns says, hello, my friends, and good to have you tune in. Robert Burns was on the show a few weeks ago. And
he's staying out of jail. Congratulations.
He is, and he also said I got to put my glasses on, folks. 2022 to 2023, both Republicans and Democrats have gone down in registered voters, and NPAs have gone up. Well, I'm one of them. So I think that's why. There's a bunch of us here in the middle that I just don't feel like our voices are covered well.
But there's other problems that exist too, and you have to get beyond, the dirtbag politics that take place and the greed and the power shifts that are taking place. I mean, it's a village. Let's face it. There's going to be people who are looking to make some money. People are looking to gain some territory and power, and they want
consultants is a big way. I know your former manager loved
Howard.
Consultants.
He sure did.
I covered a show on the train, and I know one of the consultants the county hired, and they paid $120,000. It just makes me sick. Was to study the K line that the train company doesn't own. We knew they couldn't use it because they don't own it, and he did a study that said, "Yep, there's a line out there." They didn't talk about it in their environmental impact study, but they can't use it because they don't own it. They paid $120,000 for that. I just summed it up in 30 seconds for free. And I could have done it for them back then.
Well, that's because somebody brought that consultant to the table and told the consultant, like Howard Brown used to do, if I get you this contract with these people that are going to pay for it, you're going to give me 30%.
Well, we're paying for it. OPM again.
Right, other people's money. So now the guy that brings them to the table gets 30% of the contract for $120,000. Slam dunk.
For something that's foolish.
There's your government. There's a government. And there was a lot of that going on. Taryn Krista's out there now running things. And
she
Madam
was the administrator
Taryn,
when that
she's not going to put up with shenanigans like that out there.
She was the county administrator when that study was done, I will say, the train study.
Yeah. So. I don't agree with a lot of things with Taryn. Taryn is good at what she does for what she does.
And I think, by the way, Taryn is an excellent choice right now to straighten things out after Howard Brown left. I think she comes with so much knowledge.
She's strong.
She is.
She's an Iron Maiden of sorts, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. She is a strong lady.
You need a strong leader, especially out there to come in and clean house. And I from what I've heard, she's doing a phenomenal job.
She is doing a phenomenal job, and she will get everything in place. I have
just don't agree with that one study that I ran into. And I know there's more out there. It's just like examples of what our government does. It just gets bloated and they don't think things through. And it's like, okay, yeah, we'll do this study and that study. And
well, yeah, it's priorities, and then sometimes we lose focus on priorities. I do it in my life. I do it looking at other things, and you have to refocus yourself sometimes on what are your priorities. But in order to do that, you have to have a vision of where you want to go. You have to have a path, someplace you want to try to get to, a mission, an end point. And I think that is missing. I know that they'll say, well, we've done vision planning. We have a vision plan. Well, I think that your council people should work towards that vision planning. Then if you've established a 3-5-7 plan, follow your 3-5-7 plan and quit trying to change it every time somebody comes up and starts jumping up and down and screaming.
It's continuity again.
It is. You got to have it.
Robert Burns just tuned in again, and I appreciate this. He said, we're talking about NPAs and people changing parties because they may not represent where they are. He said, in Jacksonville yesterday, it illustrates exactly that point. Republicans had a plus 10% turnout advantage and lost the election to a Democrat by 4%. Republicans are not happy with the party politics right now and the bullying, and that's really a good example. A plus 10% turnout, but yet a Democrat won by 4%. Clearly,
well,
not all
I can tell you
Republicans
in Martin
voted.
County that you have a very large percentage of the registered Republicans that are Democrats. All you have to do is go back and look. When Charlie Kane came in back in the 80s, put music to that one.
No kidding.
Yeah,
that
when
one
Charlie
3 times in a row.
Kane came in back in the 80s to the local political scene and really started to build the Republican Party here in Martin County, the Democratic Party was in full control in Martin County.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, full control. They're major headquarters.
Because they have not been in control for a
meetings.
long time.
No, they have not. And what they learned was that with the money and the experience and leadership that Charlie Kane from the Kane Center, who he and his
Yes.
wife, the Kane Center, is named after, because it's their endowment that made that happen.
Okay.
Charlie started the
REC, was that right?
yeah, the REC. Well, it was already started, but he took over as chairman, and within a very short period of time was able to begin getting people elected, to begin raising money, to begin building an infrastructure, and to begin doing things. He was an old-time conservative-minded Christian Republican from the old day.
Right.
An old salt, like
Yep.
they say about DeSantis, he's your grandfather's conservative, okay? He was your grandfather.
Okay.
He was your
Sure.
grandfather and those conservative types of the day. So anyway, the Democratic Party here in Indiantown, in Martin County, went underground, and a very, very large number of those people abdicated their party for the ability to begin to influence elections here in Martin County by being Republicans. And the way that they did that was by reducing the size of the party's effectiveness of the Democrats. When is the last time you saw a full slate of Democrat candidates here in Martin County? You don't, which means then that if there is no one that is running against a Republican in a primary, then that Republican automatically goes in. So when you get a strong, good Republican, conservative, fiscally minded, non-liberal candidate that runs against one of your more liberally based candidates, well, they don't put anybody else up against them.
Right.
Goes to the primary. You're predominantly progressive and democratic in your philosophance within the Republican Party here locally. The conservatives are backbenched. The Liberty Group was backbenched for well over 2 decades that I served.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Backbenched. We were given promises and little tidbits up front and then backbenched and told to sit down. And that's because so many of the progressives and the Democrats in Martin County run things. So you get into these, you got to understand a little bit of the cultural history to be effective with trying to combat some of this
Eric
stuff.
Miller was part of the Republican Executive Committee. You were a committee man as well.
State committee
man. You've been very involved with the politics for a very long time here. So you have a lot of, an old man. No, you're not. But the history that you bring is very important, and I appreciate you sharing that with folks because a lot of people don't know the history here in Martin County. I mean, I didn't even realize this was once more of a Democratic county. It's so solidly red right now.
Yeah, it is solidly red right now. And
there are rhinos. There are Democrats that are registered as Republicans. Why? Because they'll never be elected as a Democrat in this county because it is so red.
Well, all 5 of your county commissioners are Republicans. You're going to tell me that Sarah Erd's a Republican?
Right,
she has some fiscal conservatism to her.
Right.
I will say that. Her fiscal side is conservative. But, man, it's off the charts to the left on everything else. And you're going to tell me that having a full slate of Republicans has led us to the point that we have, Sailfish Park. We have all of these bands of different types of businesses going on. We have all of these ownerships of different. That is not a conservative Republican philosophance of governance. They signed on, the Republican Party did, back in the same period of time, back in the late 80s, early 90s, as a sustainable community. One of the early Agenda 21 adopters integrated into this county's building code and infrastructure and everything else is the new Agenda 2030, now being rolled out as what we all know as that great tinfoil conspiracy theory hat, the Great Reset.
That's right.
Here's Klaus Schwab. Well, they're saying it in their own words, what we were telling people back from the Rio conference when Bush went down there, Bush Sr., and signed over a lot of our rights, and they've slowly been incremented. But Martin County was on board with this from the get-go.
Well, that's the
sustainable
frustrating
development.
thing, and it feels like, and it's part of the reason why I went NPA. It just feels like so much of our politics is heading down one road direction. Doesn't matter who's in power, whether it's
Staff.
Republican or Democrat. Staff, and they are the ones that don't change, and they're the ones. I mean, how many times people listen to a commission meeting? I can't tell you how many times the commission say staff recommended it. Staff recommended it.
recommendation.
I was shocked we had 5 Republicans on the county commission, and they did shut down those 2 pet stores. I mean, this is the United States of America. These stores had done nothing wrong. Republicans are supposedly for staying out of business.
Yep.
You know, let's let the people run their business. We want more independence for our businesses and people. And they just came in and shut them down for personal reasons. I mean, it was. I guess they, you know, they fell prey to the fact that these are puppy mills and they're not puppy mills, and you know they don't give them a list of who to buy for and not buy for. They just shut them down.
Yeah, but this was primarily driven by one commissioner. It was
one
driven
rescue
through
group,
the door
yes.
through one rescue group
Went to a
who
commissioner
at the
that
same
pushed it.
time has a political relationship with that commissioner.
Yes.
A financial political
right.
relationship with them. So, I mean, look, the optics again on all of this. Take a name and take a face out of it and say you put character X there, and if character X did this, what would you say character X was doing? If you were teaching some kind of a moral and ethics class, you wouldn't
Right.
say this commissioner, you would say Commissioner X. So commissioners, look a little bit about how this looks on the gamesmanship that you're playing, because it's reflective upon you, it's reflective upon us, and it's very telling about the gamesmanship that's taking place.
It is. And
It
it's-
is.
It was
And
anything but smaller
people are
government,
fed
which I believe
up.
in. They are.
Fed up.
They are. Eric, this hour is flying by, and I really, really, really wanted to talk about human
Yeah,
trafficking. We
I do
started,
too.
and now we got sidetracked again. But please tell us. Let's go back to that, because this is so incredibly important. What's happening out in Indiantown?
Well, you know, we talked a little bit about history, and there is a history to Indiantown that kind of sits as a foundation for this next portion of the discussion, and that is back in, again, the 80s, during the Guatemalan Revolution that was taking place. Very bloody revolution. It was bad. It drove large populations of Guatemalans out of Guatemala. It was a humanitarian crisis. And it was a precursor to setting up an underground network through the Catholic Church that is, in some regards, I would say, still alive today, and that is they actually brought people into Indiantown, were able to house, clothe, feed. They would put them up. Now you look at Indiantown and go, where are they going to put all these people up? Well, we have a big problem in Indiantown with boarding houses, and it happens predominantly within the same Hispanic and Guatemalan community and culture, Central American culture that we have in Indiantown. There are 40+% of the population, I want to say 42 to 46% by census, but we'll say 40% of the population is Hispanic. As classified. So when you're bringing people in illegally, when illegals are finding out that they can get here illegally and that there's an underground culture that's already set up to accept them, and you don't stick out like a sore thumb, there's a lot of agricultural work that's available during certain times of the year. You get a migrant population. We're supposed to have that under control through Imigra. But it's nice to think that those measures are there. But what happens is you end up building a culture that came from Central America. The only thing missing now is the bloody revolution. They've just transplanted the way that their lives were functioning in Guatemala, in Honduras, in Nicaragua, and they're bringing them to Indiantown. And a lot of those are very third world cultural ideas from a human standpoint. One of the one of the things that takes place, and it has to do largely with the fact that they are illegal. They don't make a lot of money. They can't afford a house. They're not going to get a mortgage. They're not going to get a rent. They can't. They're barely carrying an ID that makes them halfway legal if they get pulled over. So where do you sleep? Where do you sleep? Well, what happens, and this is where they put a lot of these people up, the boarding houses. A lot of families in Indiantown have and do still operate an underground boarding house network for large numbers of men, predominantly military age, young men, okay? So a father and mother that have 2 or 3 children that are trying to raise their family and need money because everything's getting more expensive or they can make the money. You got 2-3 bedrooms in a front room, okay? You can get 4, 5, 6 cots in a regular bedroom. Now, remind you, these are 900 to 1,200 square foot homes. And you have 2 and 3 children and parents that are still in these homes, that are living in these homes. So at night, the cots go out in the living rooms, they go out in the hallways, you pay extra for a shower, you pay extra for bathroom usage, you pay extra for food. It's an a la carte. And in the morning, you pick your stuff up and you take it with you. Well, at night, there's a lot of beer drinking that takes place. I can testify to that just by walking up and down the street and looking at all the beer cans that are all over the place. There's a lot of beer drinking that takes place in Indiantown, a lot of alcohol. You can find people passed out sometimes within the bushes. There's a lot of areas that I will be talking to the council about potentially going in and cleaning or requiring the underbrush to be cleared out, because there are places where you can look through the underbrush and see that there are encampments in there. There are night encampments where people are sleeping. And that's because the buses come in and stop at a restaurant in town and tend to drop off people that are all carrying little plastic bags full of a day food pack of food, probably coming in from some border that they cross somewhere, and they're being shipped to Florida. They get dropped off in Indiantown. So they congregate at the nearest place and they're accepted. It's like a sponge. You've got 40% of the population that speaks your language, man. Why are you going to stick your thumb out and go down the road?
Right.
So part of the problem, again, goes back to these third world traditions and customs, and pedophilia is unfortunately predominant and rampant throughout the Central American culture in third world levels and amongst the very illiterate and very poor. Alcoholism amongst the Hispanics is high. It's off the charts. And you are finding in the past month, and I'm not just talking out both sides of my cheeks here, the past month and a half, 2 months, have seen 3 arrests by the Martin County Sheriff's Office, 2 for pedophilia, 1 for, I believe, child endangerment, solicitation. They got him before he was able to do anything.
There was a murder not long before that.
There was, don't get me started on Swamp Fest that's coming up again. There were 2 people killed at last year's Swamp Fest in Booker Park. So, it's a real world out there, and it used to be back in the 70s, man. It was the Wild West out there. Indiantown used to be left alone and had a reputation, and some of that is starting to wear off a little bit. But these putting children in danger for $1, and not only that, There is a certain amount of sex trafficking that takes place within. There is open air prostitution that I don't understand how MCSO has not seen it. I'm happy to talk to you about the particular place that I've seen these women being walked across the street to semi-trucks that are parked in the middle of Warfield Boulevard, 710. They stop in front of a particular establishment. They park their truck with a sleeper cab on it. They go into this establishment and come out with a woman in a red dress and red heels and get into the truck, and the truck doesn't move for 15 minutes. Look, we can do whatever we want anymore, right?
You know, I know, and I was going to ask you, Eric. It's like this is going on there. Why is it so quiet? I mean,
I'm
why
not
is it
looking
the
for
sheriff's
it. I'm
department?
driving into
you see
town
it.
to go to pick up something at the dollar store that
Is
I
it
should have
intentional
got.
that heads are being turned the other way, or just not? You know, what do you think? I mean, no, I'm asking for your opinion
Okay,
here, but if
here you
somebody
go.
just
Here
don't
you
care,
go.
what?
Here's what you're going to get, and this is this is it, people. If it's not, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Well, you expect your sheriff's department to go out there, your police department.
I don't have a license, so I can't investigate, but I can
No.
show you all the breadcrumb trails. I can, and I don't have to look that hard. There is a pastor and a deacon, and I know it sounds like it's a start to a bad joke, but it's not. We didn't walk into a bar. We walked into a state legislator's office. We actually went up and saw Toby.
Okay.
And he was working as a governor's
Toby
appointee. Yeah.
But isn't that John Snyder's
But
district?
he was working as a governor's appointee to sex trafficking.
Okay.
Committee that the governor had put
That
together.
is,
The
yes,
governor
sex
had
trafficking,
asked
human
him-
trafficking
Yeah.
is definitely one of
So
the
Toby was
priorities for
working on that
Representative
committee,
Overdorf.
so we went to see Toby.
Okay.
Okay, to just say, look, these are the things. Now, the preacher and the deacon have done a lot more documentation of these things than I've done. I have. I can talk to my neighbors. I can sit and watch and put two and two together. I can watch what people tell me takes place on my own after they tell me, and you go, yeah, you know.
But have you called the sheriff's department or anybody? I mean, I feel like there's a disconnect there because I feel like they would go and investigate if somebody said, "Hey, this is going on right now."
We were told by Toby that there were efforts that were taking place by the sheriff's department and that their hands in a lot of these situations were tied because they couldn't gain access to the home. Because, again, America, you have a right without a warrant to
Right.
keep that police officer at bay outside.
Right.
So I will say that given the arrests that have taken place, that the sheriff's office doesn't owe Eric Miller any kind of consideration to keep me informed as to what they're doing out there, and I don't expect it.
No. I
But
mean, I would think it'd be a sting
do
operation.
think that given the outcome of what we're seeing, that there is some, there is some action taking place, or these things would not have taken. These arrests would not have taken place. Is what I'm saying. They're
Okay.
busy. They're working. They're doing things. If they would like to talk to me, I'm happy to share with them what we shared with Toby. I'm happy to do whatever I can. I come on the radio and tell people what's going on. But it's happening within our own community. And if it's not this type of a problem, in Stewart or in any other place, there's something else that everyone's driving around and just going, well, what can I do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do?
And I think it's
People
important
feel so
to
damn beaten down anymore.
Well,
Americans, you got to get back on your. I'm sorry, Casey, but they got to get back on their feet. You got to pull your bootstraps back up and just look in the face of what's wrong and say, no, my neighborhood, my city, my America, my world. No, you don't get to do it. And where the individual does it, the next guy stands. And where two stand, three stand, and we get ourselves back together. But we collectively have to come back with that energy. We have to.
We truly do. And I really wanted to spotlight this because, Indiantown is part of our community. It's part of our county, and it's 15 minutes away down the street.
Yep.
And we don't hear a lot about what's happening out there. And you're not the only one, Eric, that brought this up. So, some of the other folks, some of them that have run for the council before, said we've got to do something. That it's such a prevalent issue out here.
There's prostitution that is run out of, and I can tell you, nighttime prostitution. They will actually load the girls up in vans and they take them around.
Load the girls in vans.
Yep.
I mean, folks.
They load the girl. I know. I can show you where. Again, I was just speaking with the preacher and the deacon. They've got
it's
evidence.
that prevalent.
They've
People
got
know.
Yeah, it's known what's going on. But you got to know that there's prostitution going on in New York City too. And you look at all the New York City cops. So why do they still have prostitution? Why do they still have drugs? Why are they just? Are you turning a blind eye?
New York City's another whole problem right now.
No. I'm just saying it's the nature of the beast. It's the nature
but
of
I
the
feel
element.
like Indiantown is a smaller area that ought to be a little bit easier to.
They're going to gentrify everything away. They're not going to have to deal with it. They're going to gentrify things away.
Small town communities have a larger, in my opinion, a larger sense of community where people do get involved with each other's business more than in larger cities. Larger cities, you're lucky to know who lives next door.
Yeah.
The small town communities, everybody, there's gossip, everybody knows what's going on. So to have something like that, I think that's probably what hits home harder for me with Indiantown, is it's such a wonderful small community, and yet to have this type of
yeah, but see, part of the cultural aspect of the Central American idea of bringing your culture and not assimilating into the American culture with you is that you have a loyalty to your fellow countrymen, to your fellow ethnicity, not to a loyalty of American principles and standards. And that's where we get into problems again. We're talking about a government trying to drive towards a mission statement. Well, as citizens, we're supposed to be driving towards a mission statement of bettering ourselves as better citizens and better Americans. There is no perfect achievement of the American dream, but trying to grab that dream is what makes us all so much better as people, and we've gone bipartisan. We're sitting in a camp somewhere around a fire saying Ugg's over there saying this, and Ugg's over here saying that. I mean, come on, guys. Did you see the interview with Elon Musk that they did on Forbes? I think it was.
I
Forbes
did not.
Well, they asked a question of Elon, and the interviewer says, hey, in this bipartisan world, okay, everything has to be answered one way or the other, and you've decided not to answer that way. Aren't you afraid? Elon kind of sat there for a good 15, 20 seconds of just dead air and was thinking about, oh my God. Think about this. I've got a Forbes interviewer, editor asking me why I'm not in one camp and why I'm not just keeping my mouth shut on certain things. He's like, hello? So that's where we are as a society. So I think a lot of that lends into it as well. It's a very complex issue.
And that much more important for those with a voice to speak up and, be a beacon of truth and a beacon of freedom. And I'm going to go back to our county commission here for a second. Because they are the elected officials, it is so disappointing when they sit back and just say whatever staff. Yeah. I want you to think independently. If you're all Republicans. Some of you have been involved in the Republican Party more than others as far as county commissioners. So where is that smaller government when you decided to come in and just close these stores without any concrete good reason other than personal feelings?
Take a look at the budget, too. And here's how they will argue with you that you have a balanced budget that you have to maintain, and they do by law. They have to put a balanced budget out. But what they can do is pre-approve without funding projects. So ask them for their pre-approved unfunded project list. Last time I looked, it was at $385 million.
Holy cow.
So you want to know why it's hard to get this project through? Because you have all these political projects that are sitting out there that are ready to be picked off of the tree and go, hey, George, I got you your project. We approved it. We got the money for it. We're going to get it done. Because
staff's behind scenes. And folks, it's not just Martin County when I talk about staff. This happens all the way up at the federal level as well. Staff in Washington, D.C., that's what doesn't change over. You have the same people that are really behind the scenes running this country over and over and over again. And it's that much more important than ever that we have independent-minded elected officials that don't just say, oh, staff recommended it. Yeah, I need you to question things. The Bright Line settlement agreement, that was with this commission now, and they agreed to not oppose it, to basically be silenced. And I still know how elected officials do that. But speaking of that, we're going to do a show on the Bright Lie. It's coming up on June 7th. I'm going to have Scott Watson in here. He's one of the impacted owners. But they started a lawsuit because our county commission can't anymore. They agreed not to. And so that's going to be a really good show, and we'll get some updates there. But I've had a lot of people that have been reaching out to me that live west of the bridge say, what can we do? You know, they're not a business owner. They're just impacted. So all these things are important. And, you know, our elected officials gave up the right to represent you anymore when they signed that agreement. And so here we are as citizens, which is kind of cool that we're getting together to try and fight it, but we need the support of those elected officials that we pay with OPM, our money.
Right.
So, and also next week I'm going to have a couple shows on. I'm going to have Rebecca Bird on. She has a film about bullying, and so we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to have Orca, which they do all kinds of wonderful things here in the community, and we're going to talk about some of the volunteer things that students can do in high school. And again, it's a good community, issue that everybody can get together and just help. But this little off politics, but some fun programs.
You're not going to have any time for me anymore. Hey, listen, real quick, we've got a meteorologist kind of guy. BJ's Weather Page is going to be a new TAM member.
Fantastic.
And contributor.
Talk about Martin, folks.
New contributor.
And I see him all the time on your Facebook page, and he is sharing weather, which is so important. We're going to have the hurricane season coming up, so you're going to want to talk about Martin, because BJ's weather is going to keep us posted.
We're going to put some insider stuff up there too. We're working on an insider track for people, where people like you and I can go put some insider stuff up there that won't make Facebook, that they can find us. Big news coming up.
Love it. So, folks, this was Facebook Live today. This show will air on the radio next Wednesday. I'll be off air, but the show will air then, and I will be back 1 week after that, which I think is May 31st. Always wonderful. Eric Miller, talk about Martin.
Yeah.
Yep.
Casey Ingram Show.
There you go. We'll see you in 2 weeks.